Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast, where we answer life's hard questions to help you make smart decisions with your money. I'm Jeremiah Lee, and this is Randy Barkley. We're both certified financial planners. I'm also a California licensed attorney.
So, AI, artificial intelligence. Jeremiah, I've got a whole bunch of articles and information I've been trying to read and understand and trying to determine what the benefits are going to be and what the negatives are going to be. And I want to have an open discussion. Of course, we're not the definitive answer. We're not technicians from that standpoint.
Well, maybe nobody is, right?
Yeah.
And how many of these articles were written by AI about AI?
I don't think so.
But right, to say we're all kind of discovering this together, and we, of course, like you said, are not technical experts in this realm. But it is interesting how much content is coming out of what AI might do to impact.
Yeah, and I think that because technology is moving so quickly, there are concerns that it's going to get ahead of control. Now, again, most reasonable minds don't believe that we're going to have some robotic control of our life, right? But there is intrusion into our life in order to provide the information that hopefully will benefit us individually as well as society. But the whole aspect of AI is going to be transformative. And mostly in, let's talk about the negatives. It's going to change job impact.
It's going to change a lot. And I think there's I don't say an elephant in the room, but there is a sentiment, just like you were saying, of Elon Musk and a few others kind of signed an open letter, a year or two, however many years ago, of just saying, hey, this is an existential threat. Like this could wipe out humanity as we know it, and goes on and on. And I think the other part that I guess relate to is there are so many movies out there that start with helpful robots and good technology and good world systems that look utopian, and then very quickly in that movie they turn dystopian and the whole world is falling apart and it's the robots to blame, or it's the technology systems.
Some mad scientist in the back room that's controlling everything.
Right? And we have that in our psyche as a culture, because there's been people who make some real predictions, say, hey, this could lean at this could head in a unhelpful way. But also so many creative minds have made so many good movies over the years that look a lot like what we're living. And you go from things like the Jetsons to say, hey, won't this be great? Won't this be wonderful? To, what was that one with Will Smith, I, Robot, where the robots take over, and so many other movies.
Yeah, I mean, will this be the Titanic where we don't see the iceberg and all humanity is struck and we are going down for doom?
Well,
or is this the start of finding sonar and radar, and we can navigate around all the things that can be very devastating, right?
That's a good one, right? Yeah, that one analogy of, is this, we're doomed, or is this the thing that'll save us?
Right.
It's both. And, I think in the age groups, but most everyone's seen the Terminator movies. Starts off with great robots, and all of a sudden, so that's part of, I think, the backdrop that we're speaking into is there is a concern amongst people, either valid or invalid, of that this is going to lead someplace we don't want to be. And I think part of it also is the feeling that we're on the brink of destruction. I think that's permeated our society at the moment.
Well, I think our mindset is, historically, there have been moments where, the discovery of nuclear power and the absolute destruction of two major cities in Japan by a nuclear bomb. And all of a sudden, humanity looked at that and went, this is devastating. This could be really, really bad.
When especially just being in America, we've had decades and decades of growth, prosperity, benefit to society. There's been wars absolutely across the whole world, and those continue even to this day. But since, say, the World War or things like that, where these massive, we're on the brink of destruction, we've had a period of prosperity and growth and goodness. And I think people see this as, will this be the thing?
Will this be the end of it?
Yeah, that breaks it, that the other shoe drops, we go back into a world war. And the people that have, actual memories, physical memories of World War living, or, refugees coming from war-torn countries, they have actual memories of the world falling apart. Whereas the majority, I would say, of Americans currently, who don't have those backgrounds, don't have active memories of the world falling apart. And so there's, I think, this anxiety that builds up of, what if everything we have just falls apart? So as we look at AI, we'll shift at the second
part. We've read a lot. I mean, I just want to make sure that you're aware. We have spent, and again, we are not the definitive answer or the full knowledge on what AI is or what it will potentially do. We're trying to get kind of caught up too, but I think what's really important is that AI has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, when you text something and your phone completes your sentence, fills in, so to speak, well, that is AI in a very rudimentary way.
Yeah, voice recognition.
Right.
One of the articles we talked about was that we as civilians, non-military, non-confidential scientist areas are seeing AI through ChatGPT and some of these other ones that are coming out. We're now exposed to it in a really real way, and we're getting to play with it and engage with it. But just like you said, we've been using AI. AI has been artificial intelligence. I mean, in essence, it's an algorithm, and algorithms have existed for decades. That they've been in the
it's going back
things.
to the early '80s. I mean, this has been around for quite a while. It's just that we're seeing exponential growth.
Yep.
And it happens like the internet. We have this explosion, and everything kind of the experimentation, but there was just this mass explosion of use of it. And most of us, historically, we don't. It's hard for us to go back even 10 or 20 years and remember what our life was without the conveniences of technology that we have now.
Yeah.
And so the unknown is scary.
Yeah, that's right. But you think like pre-internet living,
right?
People who lived, which most everyone these days, had some memory before. I mean, everyone 40 and above, I guess I'd say, has some memory of existing before the internet, before that was part of their lives. And now it's just a very regular part of the connectivity of devices, internet. And there'll be people who going forward will not remember, what it's like to be before we had artificial intelligence, figuring things out for us. So some of the scary aspects that we think of is, I think, the dystopian future, that the world's going to be taken over. I think a little closer to home and a little, sooner.
Yeah, in other words, the end of the world is not really the conversation.
Yeah, we're going to have today.
Rational conversation, I think, that people kind of has.
I mean, I still saw the Terminator movie, so it's still in the back of my head. But
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, though.
But I do think in the closer timeline is the change in jobs. I mean, we're already seeing it, and I think especially coming out of COVID, there's a number of industries and jobs who are, one, desperate for workers, but two, they're being innovative. They're saying, what can I use here? I talked to a friend of mine who's a business owner, and he just made a comment of saying, I'm not the best at writing emails. And I've run a number of them through ChatGPT. Just said, hey, write me an email that says this, and he'll grab it, he'll copy and paste it, and then he'll edit it. He's like, it was better than I would have written it. It made me sound great. And I ran it through another colleague at his office and just said, did that sound fake? Did it sound real? He's like, it sounded great. I was surprised you could write so well. Somewhat joking, somewhat half-heartedly, but to say, looking forward, do you need an office assistant do the same way? Do you need a scheduling?
So somebody who is, I mean, again, I know, I know a lot of executives. We go back 30 years. They had a secretary. My wife actually learned shorthand when she was in college. Actually, in high school, and she used shorthand. Well, shorthand is unless you're in a firm where the secretary is in their 70s, shorthand is kind of a lost art.
Yeah.
And the executives are typing a lot of their own memos. They're not using the secretary in the way that they were used, let's say, back in the 60s.
Yeah. But it's interesting even to think in the 80s and 90s, the law firm I worked at, everyone had at their desks these little recorders. And then they would have people who would transcribe that for you. Well, now it's funny that we might get back to, from speaking it and someone else would do the work for you. Then attorneys took over their own emails. They write all their own things. But now there's a lot of speech recognition software where you can simply say and it'll record your words. And I think what we're coming to with ChatGPT and these language-based models is that you could not just, it's not just transcribing what you're saying. You could actually just tell it, write an email to this person telling them this, and it will write the whole email for you with a normal intro and a normal outro. One of the things that we'll talk about, it's a little in the good sides, but it was some of the articles talked about kind of leapfrogging some of these technologies because of these language-based models. So an older worker, well, even I guess a younger worker myself, I never learned to code. I can't code a computer system. That's not something I ever learned to do. And in some views, as a kid growing up, that would have been a really good skill set because that would be really needed to interact with computers in that way. However, with these language learning programs, it's going to leapfrog. I'm probably never going to need to code. My kids may never need to code. I think it's still a useful thing for them to learn, but they may not need it because the language-based programming, you'll just tell the computer, write me a code that makes this duck bounce up and down, and it will do it for you versus having to know the lines of code. So there's a number of, talk about workers and things that can jump over learning some of these technologies because they just instruct the computer. And the computer is then able to carry out these tasks, which is phenomenal, right? It feels kind of like a Jetsons.
Well, and I think a lot of people have fear because they don't know what's behind it. They don't know what creates that, and the mind goes to more nefarious thinking.
Yeah,
and I don't think you can go 100% there. I think you have to be aware.
Yeah,
but I think there's enough information out there that indicates, okay, this is how this works.
Yeah,
Well,
there's even some of these AI models I know that they were training. They trained them on internet chatter, people talking. It's going through. I remember there's an article, it was a few years ago, but it was talking about how one of them became just a horrible robot. Like it was just saying very rude, inappropriate things, and it had been trained on forums that people were apparently talking like that. And it was an interesting dynamic that it felt like this AI model was skewing to, if that's someone writing your business email, and all of a sudden it says, writes out something that's inappropriate. What is the result going to be? And I think in the near term, there's a lot of editing that's still going to happen. AI may be useful, but it's still going to run through a human.
Yes, I mean, the fear is that will AI make you look so much better than you really are that it becomes a false representation? But on the other side, will it make you look so much worse than what you really are? And that becomes a false representation.
Yeah.
So the question is how do you have a reality when you're engaging with somebody through AI, right?
Yeah.
What is it you? And I think some people feel like your personality is going to be pushed aside and AI is going to take over the forefront.
It could, everything becomes generic. And I wonder how much we talked about last week, how baby boomers, as they're retiring, are looking for these unique experiences. Talk about different retirement communities. And I wonder if that'll be similar. Like if you get a generic email from someone, it's probably AI. I'm not even interested. If you're looking for the unique item and how do you keep up with uniqueness? One item that was, just on the scary side of all this is scams. A lot of times you'll get a scam email and there's typos. It's not, really worded the way somebody really would. Well, if they took that email, that same scammer, and ran it through AI and said, write me an email to this person who I'm going to try and scam and make it sound like this, it could do it, right? I mean, that's a nefarious reason so these internet scams we already have, I think they're going to get harder. When you get emails from accounting telling you to, hey, put in this, or you need to reset your password, do this. If they're working with AI, that becomes a scary and a much more broad scale. So that's a scary version of people using it for bad purposes. I think there's the other fear that we were talking about earlier is AI in and of itself just leading society in a really harmful and detrimental way.
Yeah, and I think that as this continues to go forward, I think we're going to see changes in jobs and what are the skill sets of those jobs. And it's something that I have endorsed for a long time is that people just need to continue to learn. And I think this is going to be the encouragement. You're not just going to fill a task and do it. Without learning, you're not going to grow in that. And every job that I know of that has any kind of professional or semi-professional aspect to it requires continual learning. You're going to continue to grow in it. I see this as a tool. I don't see this as a threat. And could it be a threat? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be so Chicken Little that the sky is falling and read what I consider the worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
I want to be realistic and see that it has a positive impact. But for me and where I'm at right now in my own age, it's a learning process, and that learning process takes time. It's going to be a little bit frustrating. So
and I mean, like I said, what a human's role is in that, of what we need to do to correctly utilize and benefit ourselves with AI.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming back, we'll talk about some of the benefits that AI is already starting to present and maybe presenting in the near future.
Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation about artificial intelligence. I always like to tell people the first word here is artificial. So therefore, it's made up by humans. And the question is, people, is that a fearful thing or is that a beneficial thing? I think the issue is that when it comes to this, the change is so rapid that a lot of people just cannot keep up. I know that when I get a new software update on my computer or on my phone, it drives me crazy because I haven't even learned how to manage the one that happened before, right? So in this whole discussion on artificial intelligence, we want to talk about the things that we see that potentially are going to have a phenomenal impact upon society going forward.
Yeah, some of these outcomes. So we can start with one is job structures.
Right.
Right now, whatever hierarchy a business has, there's usually some leaders, there's usually some managers, and there's usually some task performers. And one of the articles that we've read talking about, this will probably become a lot more flat, in the sense you won't have managers over these people, of a personal thing, but rather to say, okay, we can have one professional who's running a number of tasks and able to do them all themselves because of AI. An example of this, it's not AI, but it's a step earlier. I have a colleague who's an attorney up in the Bay Area, and years ago they had a hard time competing in lawsuits against large law firms because it was just them as a solo practitioner. They needed an army of associates to read through the books and find the case law. And so the practice of law used to be you needed a bunch of attorneys and you needed a big library.
A lot of people, right?
Yeah. And then the internet came out, or just the online resources. He could do all his own case research as one attorney and be as fully prepared as an army of attorneys from a big law firm. Well, now we're seeing the next level of, rather than that one attorney having to do its own research on the cases, the legal industry is doing a lot with case law research as well as discovery. Like when you get 1,000 documents from some other party, to be able to go through them very quickly, and AI is assisting in both those. So you have not just one attorney and a number of associates, but really just one attorney and maybe a paralegal who's helping run the technology to really move this forward. So it's a world in which instead of having a lead attorney, some managing attorneys, and then an army of associate attorneys you might have had 30 years ago, now you might have one trial attorney and some support teams, and using technology to do everything else that might have been done.
And the question is will the judge or the jury take that as appropriate evidence, and will they be convinced by the AI research versus the other research that's being done?
Yeah, and
I mean, Screenwriters Guild went on strike because they're very concerned about AI replacing them, right? And for good reason, because can somebody just put in a concept and AI creates a script?
Yeah, and the question I think comes back to is what pieces now and what pieces in the future. So example being, there's video games. But a lot of times the characters, the non-main characters, will talk, they'll chatter, there's stuff on the radio, right, in the video game. And there's an article saying a lot of these game companies are using AI to now create that chatter. It's background part of the game, it adds value to the game, but it used to take a lot of time to program all that. Whereas now they're saying some of these ancillary pieces are just being programmed through AI, and they're allowing that to take care of it. And it's interesting that it's making the existing field more useful, but at some point will all those people be out of jobs and it's just AI creating it? I don't know how far that goes, but flat hierarchy is one piece. The other one that is interesting, this maybe is a negative, is negotiating. There's some studies that are saying when people negotiate face-to-face, there's ethics, there's empathy, there's things that allow us to build trust.
So if I come to you and I say, I'd like to change my job, I'd like to have a salary increase, I would like to have my work environment, this and whatever, and you as an employer say, well, there's some costs here and there's some issues that I need to discuss with you. And you're saying, how would that work? Right.
And you can negotiate that. But they're saying with AI at times, when people are negotiating not face to face, not with each other, but through intermediaries, they're much more inclined to be unethical or more aggressive or things like that. And so you may have a breakdown in that instance of two business owners trying to reach a deal, and they're using AI to write their emails back and forth. And they're never able to get you because they never develop an empathy or a trust. Because ultimately, a lot of these contracts and things, you have to trust the other person. And if you can't develop that, so that could be a negative. But one side, it makes emailing easier, right? Another side, you may be actually putting a barrier in front of that. The part that I liked was real interesting. It was saying, is this better for older workers or younger workers, higher skilled or lower skilled?
It goes right into my age group, right?
It went to both. It was really interesting. It was saying there's a number of older workers who will be able to continue working. They'll use their mindset, they use their skills, the skill set they've developed, and they just add AI onto it. And they can just tell the computer, look up this type of research and find this study for me. And it feels like something out of Star Trek or something. But then they're also saying younger workers may be more quick to adapt to this. And they say, which is better, which will impact more? The articles we were reading, it kind of came up as a toss-up, like it will impact everyone. Mm-hmm. Older workers, if they refuse to learn or refuse to engage with it, will struggle. I think that's
and I think a lot of this has to do with what kind of education you have too. If you're educated in an environment where you're just a outcome-based education, you're being trained to do a certain kind of job task, and that's what you do. Whereas if you're trained to be a critical thinker, to be able to look at the circumstances and the facts and be able to say and have a judgment call on it. And I think that's going to be a really critical part of education of how people look at this.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just to push back every time, but to think it through, to have a mindset to say, is that really true? Is that the right outcome? Is that what I'm trying to accomplish here, right?
And that could favor, I think, even older workers that have a sense of saying, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I know that's what the result was. I know that's what the research says, but there's no way that this is what is going to be the outcome. And to have that filter, I guess, maybe that's a skill set that will come through, is, you know, writing good prompts, you know, engaging with AI in a reasonable way will be a skill set in itself. But then also filtering what comes back. That's part of the fear, I think, with a lot of these. There was in our specific industry with, you know, giving financial advice. People were playing with this. What if I asked ChatGPT, should I invest in a Roth? Should I put my money in a 401k? And there's some of that where it's coming out great. You know, that's reasonable. There's other parts where it's coming out unreasonable, or it's just coming out overly vague. And the hard part on that is being able to trust artificial intelligence. You know, if we get to a point where it's consistently good and we can trust it, I won't say that's great. It's a better development. There's another side where there's always probably needs to be, I mean, I think in my mind, there always needs to be a human filter to say, hey, this is wrong, or this is not.
Well, I think, again, that's where I come back to the critical thinking. There's an article here written by Sean Captain with Wall Street Journal, but the title of the article is 25 Questions to Ask Yourself About AI. And if you'd like to have a free reprint of this, contact our office. Go to our website, go to the contact page, or give us a call at our office phone number, 951-684-7011. We would be more than happy to send you out a free reprint of this article. If you have a subscription to Wall Street Journal, you could go and look it up probably and look at it. But this gives you some basic questions to look at.
Yeah, and things to consider for yourself, to say, you know, how do I feel about this? What am I concerned here? Because AI right now, a lot of people, is this abstract idea. Right. But kind of drill down to say, what do I believe about it? And how is it going to impact me? And how do I choose to engage with it?
Right. So anyway, this is information that we want you to become informed. We want you to make better decisions about your life and to get to a point in time where you're not fearful of AI, but you have a good knowledge base of it, and you can answer for yourself how it's going to be utilized going forward. Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.